All right. Hello and welcome to Backstage with Gig Performer, the Foundation series. My name is Brett Pontecorvo, and I am one of the members of the Gig Performer team. In the next 6 weeks, we are going to be going through what makes Gig Performer so special. And it is an insanely complex program. It can do so much. But when I was really thinking through exactly what it was that made Gig Performer so complex, the answer was it's not complex. It's a bunch of really simple ideas stacked on top of each other so that you can create something that sounds complex without actually having to do anything that is super complex. And so this week, in the next 6 weeks, we're going to be going over the foundational elements. What makes Gig Performer so special, so powerful at the base level, so that you can kind of take this knowledge and really build something that works for you as a performer. So today's going to be an overview. We're actually going to meet the team. We're going to meet Nebojsa and David, who are two of the designers, who are the designers, the two designers of Gig Performer. And it's going to be a really great time. But before we get into all of this, I want to introduce myself because maybe you don't know who I am. So, yeah, we've got Nebojsa and David on the screen right now. And you know what? Even before I introduce myself, you know what's interesting about this picture is that both of these men who are unbelievable software designers are sitting there playing their instruments. And I think that's got to tell you something about how this software works because they are using it themselves, as we can even see here. But my name's Brett Pontecorvo, and you might know me from the YouTube channel Live Keyboardist, where I specialize in helping keyboard players make a really fantastic live setup. And that's no small thing. And Gig Performer has actually become an essential element of what I do when I'm performing live. So I'm really excited to share that with you guys today. I live in New York City with my wife and our newborn, Shua. Here's a picture of what's going on here. I couldn't resist throwing him on the screen because the whole couch potato onesie just gets me right at my core. But listen, I have been a musician living and working in New York City for a really long time. For about the last 10 years, I've been a musical director working with singers and with orchestras and with kids and with adults and all across the gamut, working with people of all ages. I've been teaching people music software for a really long time as well. And I've been teaching lessons to kids. I've been doing all of this stuff, and it's made something really interesting happen for me. And it's given me a little bit of insight to kind of see what some of the issues are when we combine music and technology. And when I boil it down, it comes down to the fact that DAWs are just not built to be live performance software. Right. And so live musicians, keyboardists especially, but guitar players, singers, anybody who needs to produce something that sounds like a record in a live context has this hurdle to overcome where they need a technology assistant of some sort to be able to do exactly what it is they want to do. But it's not quite the right software, and the priorities are not weighted in the way that would make it the most successful for them, for these performers. And so we have to shift a little bit of what our thought is, but I think looking at it from the lens of what's wrong with the DAW is going to kind of help us to figure out really what's going on. But right now, I actually see we've got a lot of people who are popping in. We're hitting about 30 right now. So if you have just joined in on YouTube or Facebook right now, I want you to go ahead, hit that like button, let us know that you're here, and also let us know where you're viewing from, because we've got viewers and users who are all over the world. So say hello in those comments right now. Let us know where you're streaming in from. Feel free to post any questions. Can't guarantee that we're going to get to all of them, but kind of let us know where you are tuning in from. So while we're waiting for those to pop up, there's a bit of a delay on our end over here. Let's just go into kind of what's going on inside a DAW that's working against you in terms of live performance. I see Mark Jones just popped in here from the UK. Welcome, Mark. Welcome, John from Florida. We've got Phil M from California, Donald popping in from Las Vegas. Guys, thank you so much for being here. You guys mean a lot to us. Our users not only are what we make this software for, but they're the people who help us refine it because they're using it and they're a part of our community. Okay, so DAWs, friends, let's check it out. Problem number one is that speed and efficiency are just not prioritized. Now, we can't really blame DAWs for not prioritizing these things, and I want to give it a little bit of context here, right? So, if you're using a DAW to make a recorded song, we can have delay compensation. And if something takes too long to process, we can give the program time to do that. And it's sort of built in a way that allows that to happen, right? But instruments need to respond immediately. Otherwise, they're not an instrument, right? So it doesn't really work for us as performers to be working in a software where that's not prioritized. Now, of course, there are workarounds, and we can totally have like solutions because musicians are creative people, but on the whole, they just weren't designed for this. And it's a bit of a challenge for us, right? The next thing is that audio routing is not agile, right? So I want to give a little bit of context for exactly what this is. But in Gig Performer, we've chosen to go with a bit of a more of a visual layout. And there's a good reason for this, okay? In a DAW, if you want to have some sort of complex audio routing, which by the way is usually not that complex, you need to do a lot of work, right? If you want to have one sound go through reverb, but then simultaneously go through a chorus and a distortion on a separate channel and then be remerged, you're doing some buses. And listen, there's nothing wrong or evil about buses. However, in the context of performing live, having to do all of that and re-access it is more work than it should be, right? It shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be hard to do these things. And so we need a solution. We need to rethink how that's done, which is kind of why we've gone to the more visual side of things here, right? The next is that MIDI control is just simply not flexible. Now, when we're performing live, right, we want to have control over things that are a little bit different than if we were recording. So the minor things really matter, right? We're not necessarily worried as much about controlling large portions, although Gig Performer allows you to do that as well. We're controlling the minutia that make an instrument an instrument. We care about the low pass filter on one sound, whereas in a recording environment, we don't really care about that as much. And on top of that, we have another major issue with MIDI when we're using a DAW for live performance. And that issue is that it is not at all flexible. So if you go into a studio, the likelihood that you're going to be using any backline gear at all is very low, right? Whereas if you're a gigging performer, you might show up and be like, hey, you can't use your keyboard. You're going to need to use the backline gear. And now all of a sudden, all of your mappings don't work, or maybe something dies, right? So we need a solution. We need a way to fix the problem where it just isn't flexible, and we need to be able to be in control of our MIDI mapping. Now, friends, these are all things, right? They're small, but what has ended up happening as a result of all of this is there's a knowledge tax. Okay. And let me explain what I mean by this. There is a knowledge tax because in order for you to produce what is expected of you, an industry standard level of high playing performance that sounds like it came off of the record, that matches what people are hearing, that accounts for all of the patches that were played one at a time in a studio, but now you have to replicate live as one person, takes a long time to learn how to do in a DAW. So we have a generation of musicians who are having to really learn the ins and outs of software to do a thing that it was never intended to do. Okay. And Gig Performer really helps with this because we have to tilt the scales a little bit here. Or in other words, the balance is a little bit wrong. And let me tell you why. The goal of a DAW is to produce a finished recording, right? But that's not the goal of live performance software. The goal of live performance software is a playable performance. So the scales need to be tipped because we need to account that we need time to actually practice executing what we've created. So if 90% of our time is spent trying to figure out how to get the sound that we want, we've done a disservice to ourselves because we have completely taken the performance aspect out of it and focused entirely on programming. And so our tools really shape the way we begin to interact with our art. And tools are really important. And you know what? Let me know right now if you have ever been frustrated by your software, or if you've ever spent just way too much time programming, just let me know that in the comments right now. Just be like, yeah, I felt this frustration before. Maybe that's why you switched to Gig Performer. Maybe you're new and you're like, I'm trying to check this out to see if it works for me. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Our users, like I mentioned, are extremely important. So we have to shift this balance, right? We need to create an environment in which we get to the music quickly, because the goal of performing live is to actually play the music. We have to actually play the music. And if we're spending too much time programming, we're just never going to get there. So how do we do it? Well, Gig Performer has changed what the primary goal is. We have changed what the primary goal is. And because of doing it that way, our priorities have shifted and allowed us to do things a little bit differently in a way that's actually set up for performers to have more success rather than for recorders to have more success. I've got actually Thomas Bishop just popped in here. Oh, yeah. I'm assuming that is in response to if you've ever felt challenged by your software. We also have John Hamilton, who just popped in saying, I could never find an acceptable solution until now. Thanks for sharing, John, as well. That's exactly why I found Gig Performer. That's by Daniel. Yes, it's really revolutionary. And when you open it up and you look at it, you can feel the difference immediately. And it's just a special thing. So let's talk about what Gig Performer has done sort of to empower us, right? So the first thing that they've done is they have, in an effort to get to the music quickly, right? They have made pathways for efficient work. What I mean by this is it shouldn't take a long time to make your sounds. The sound should be made quickly. Why? Because we need to tip the scales so that we can perform live, because it's about getting to the music. So there are lots of time-saving elements that are going to help you do this in Gig Performer. And in just a minute here, we're going to have co-founder David come on and explain some of those things that are caked into the software at the root level that are just setting you up to win. Okay, so that's first. They've created pathways for efficient work. And next, we've got stability as performance peace of mind. There's a great quote somewhere on our Gig Performer blog, which if you haven't checked out, it's definitely worth going to. We've got a full blog and a full community. You can get to it from gigperformer.com, where David says something to the effect of, even though I have an intense technological background, when I'm playing music, I just want to be playing music. And so Gig Performer at its root is designed to simplify things rather than complicate it. So when you get to actually performing, you're only thinking about performing. And it's really important that we're focused on the right thing. Now, the next thing that it's done is it's created features that empower performing music rather than recording music. So if you remember earlier, we were talking about how MIDI mapping isn't flexible and how that's actually a real problem for live performers, because sometimes things just pop up. So they've included elements such as widgets, which we're going to have our co-founder Nebojsa come on and talk about the power of widgets in just a little while and kind of why they were made the way that they were made. We've got elements like the rig manager that helps us easily account for, oh, my controller stopped working, or now I have to go to backline gear. We're able to export our rack spaces from gig file to gig file. And if you don't know what any of this means, I want to encourage you, you can actually download Gig Performer completely free for 2 weeks to just give it a shot and see if it feels right to you. And if none of these things are enough, we also have a whole scripting language that's included, but we're actually going to go through foundations without touching on that much, because it's not foundational, it's extra, and man, is it extra. But we're going to learn how to use the included elements to really do what you need to get done and do it with a ton of power. And last but not least, everyone is invited to Gig Performer, okay? And this is what I mean. Gig Performer is not only live performance software over a DAW. I've been calling it a live performance command center, and there's a reason for this. Everyone is invited to be a part of Gig Performer. There are things like Ableton Link that's included, so you can have anything that's Ableton Link enabled talking to Gig Performer so your clocks stay in time. It's OSC friendly, so it can link with other programs like Lemur, or I know David also uses it with Fourscore. There's collaboration with Chord Pro. Everybody is invited to collaborate with Gig Performer, and it's really essential because when we're performing on stage, we need all of our tools pulled together into one spot so that we're not using too many controllers, right? We need to get back to focusing on what's important, which is on playing the music. So Gig Performer has kind of taken a ground up approach here and said, okay, what matters to people who are performing? What matters to people who are performing live? And they've answered the question in two ways. Okay. First of all, we've got a huge community of users who are on our community forum, which is also through our website. If you go to gigperformer.com, you can check out the community forum. And these people help us to really answer the question, what's going wrong? But also, we have two software engineers who are musicians. It is by performers for performers. And so a lot of these solutions to performance problems have come from the creators of this software. And it's why some things are so intuitive. I remember actually writing a while back that Gig Performer sort of feels like you reach out to grab a feature you wish was there, and then it actually is there. And it's a really cool experience. So we're actually about to meet one of our co-founders, Nebojsa, in just a minute right now. But if you're still with me, I want you to let me know, if you're already using Gig Performer, why you ended up switching to Gig Performer. We actually have Brandon Kramer who just wrote in ultra low latency. I mean, this is amazing, right? Ultra low latency. And latency is a bit of a funny issue because standing further away from a speaker and all of that good stuff. But yeah, it's low latency, right? I just had Helmut write in, I just changed from hardware. Yeah, because hardware is hard to carry around, right? And we have a solution that just makes our jobs as live performers easier. Why does it need to be easier? So we can focus on the playing. So if you are a current Gig Performer user, I want you to let me know right now in the comments why. Why did you switch to Gig Performer? And if you're considering it, if you're a new user, I want you to let me know in the comments what actually brought you to check it out right now. Jeremy Wong just wrote in, I actually switched because I saw your YouTube video. Thanks, man. Thank you, Jeremy. That's awesome to hear. I love that, that's why you switched. We got Phil M, who wrote in, very intuitive. And this is at the foundation of what Gig Performer has done. It's supposed to be very intuitive because we are trying to get to the actual playing and performance of the music itself. Let's see here. I used to iMidi Patch Bay, which was solid, but it didn't allow to have variations. Yes, variations have been included, so you can have these little variations between your parts. We've got Impulse Music saying, I just switched from main stage. I know a lot of people have. We've actually seen an uptick in Mac users switching from main stage as well, and I think there's something to be said for that. Let's see here. I switched because of stability and getting away from carrying a heavy keyboard. Yes. Heavy keyboards are not fun to carry. I get to use all of my DAW plugins and libraries that I already paid for. Yeah, I mean, paying for sounds, playing with sounds you already own. This is the win. So if you're on the fence right now and you're looking at these people who are writing in saying, this is why I'm using it, I want you to definitely check out our free trial for 2 weeks. Let's see. Johnny PT opens up big new worlds of performance possibilities. It does. And it does that because everybody is invited to the party. Gig Performer is not a black box. Gig Performer brings everybody in. So, okay, this is what I want to do right now. I want to talk about one of Gig Performer's visual features, which is the widget. And widgets are really important. They're super powerful, especially if you're playing an instrument that maybe needs a lot of controls. If you're a keyboard player where you need to have lots of effects. But we're actually going to bring in Nebojsa right now to talk about the power of widgets. And Nebojsa is a guitar player. He's also an unbelievable software designer. He's done a lot of the user interfaces, and he also happens to be just an unbelievable dude to know. So we're going to bring him in right now, and we're going to see how that works. Hey, Nebojsa.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Brett. Hello, everybody.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Nebojsa.
Good to see you too,
So
Brett.
I'd love to talk a little bit about widgets, and maybe you could tell us, why you guys decided to go with widgets over other alternatives to that, and why they work, and give us a little bit of insight. How did it end up being a thing?
Sure. I'd like to thank you first for putting this together, Brett. Brett's an amazing guy, people. So yeah, big thumbs up for him. And thank you, everybody, for joining in. And if you have any questions, just shoot. If I know the answer, I'll certainly give it freely. So widgets are something that somebody coming from especially on the Windows platforms, somebody who didn't see main stage or something like that, people are a little bit on the fence what the widgets are, how they work, and so on. So widgets are a way for you to bring your hardware and your OSC devices together and control your plugins, your sound, the way you want. So if you use a synth that has 100 parameters, you're not going to fill with 100 parameters while you're on stage. You need maybe to adjust your cutoff filter, maybe the volume a little bit, and so on. So you'll put those in, and as widgets, you'll assign them to your well-known control surface, whatever you use, and it's just going to work. And widgets are really at the heart of your control once you figure out what they are. They also allow you to have these variations that we're talking about. Without widgets, there's no variations. What variations are snapshots of the current widget situation. So that's how you can have variations on the sound that you have. As a guitar player, widgets are used. If you have two expression pedals, you can't control 10 things at once. You only have 1 foot, 2 feet, but 1 foot really for for expression pedal. You want to have like 1 or 2 parameters mapped to it in certain rack spaces, so you can control. If you're using a wah-wah pedal and you're in a wah-wah rack space, it's going to control your wah-wah. But then you go somewhere else, and it may control maybe a compression ratio or the volume. If you're using a distorted sound, sometimes you can be overwhelming to your bandmates, as everybody knows. Yeah. So you may want to pull back a little, and you do all of that with just one expression pedal. That's what the widgets are for. There's much more to widgets. There's scaling. There's your hardware may not be perfect, so it may not be going all the way from 0 to 100, or maybe you just want to control a small part of that parameter. You would use widget scaling, and it's just going to work. And as Brett touched on, the rig manager fits nicely into this, because when you show up for a gig, your pedal may break if you're a guitar player, or you may be traveling and you don't have your keyboard, so you're going to rent it, and you have no idea what you're going to get. So if you have 5 knobs, just plugging in that keyboard, saying knob 1 is this, knob 2 is this, through the knob 5, you're done. All your stuff works. All your parameters that you assigned, everything's just going to work. So as Brett already kind of mentioned, David and I both perform and live, and we know how it's the feeling when you're live in front of an audience and you're on stage. We know what that pressure is like. You really don't want to fiddle with software when you're performing live. You just want to play, and that's what this is.
You chatted too a little bit about how we can almost like as a guitar player, it's almost like you're building a new pedal board.
Yes, and it can be different for every rack space. So, for example, on one of my pedal boards, I would have the bottom part just switch like between some rack spaces, but the top part would control certain things, and it could control different things based on different. If I'm playing a clean sound, it's a different thing. I may be bringing a chorus in, maybe not, phaser, something like that. If I'm using slightly distorted sound, I may be bringing up the level of distortion, or maybe turning on the distortion pedal on and off, all with the same button, for example.
Right.
Because as guitar players, we don't have the luxury of having like a zillion knobs. We have very limited, space and number of.
Depending on what you need for an individual song, you can have it live in the same place every time.
That's right, and especially when you say song. If you have with one of my bands, playing 2 bands, one of my bands, we do have a set list that doesn't change. When we go on stage, we know it's going to be these 15 songs or whatever, and they go from 1 through 15. In that scenario, all I need is one button that goes next, and I'm done. It's because then I can pre-program everything so on. But with the other band, it's always almost jazz. It's not playing jazz, but it's always you have no idea what's going to happen. I don't know which song is going to be played. I don't know what kind of sound I'm going to need, and that's always like a palette. Imagine it as a palette of Michael Kotze, I think, used that analogy. a palette of colors
Yeah.
for painter. That's what this is for us. You have your palette, and you as you perform, you choose things. That's kind of a different. So those are two different kinds of. I do both.
Yeah.
And I think Gig Performer is equally well suited for both approaches.
Yes, and with switching sounds on guitar, the other thing that's really, what'd you say?
Rush Little the third said he uses a gadget. What's a gadget?
I don't know. Rush Little, why don't you tell us what a gadget is? Also, if you are a guitar player and you're using Gig Performer, let us know you're a guitar player. We want to see.
By the way, I'm not just a guitar player. I use this little like a peacock.
Can you show us how that works?
I don't know if you could hear that, but
yeah. Do you have Gig Performer open, Nebojsa?
Yeah.
Are you able to share your screen?
Sure. Do I just click share?
That would be cool. Yeah, and then
screen.
And then if you add it to the stream.
Is select window or screen. Okay, this one. Allow. Can you see this?
Yep, and here we go.
Yeah, so this is the shakuhachi sound. Yeah, and then because I use this live too, and I can go to clarinet just like this. And So that works. Sorry?
And it's all with one instrument.
Gig Performer all with one instrument, and Gig Performer drives it all. And I also have, as you can see, I have my guitar patches and bass patches. Sometimes I'm not a bass player. I'm not claiming to be a bass player. But sometimes when there's no bass player, I can play root notes.
Yeah.
So, but if I need that, I'll click on my bass and I'll pick it up. Because, it can't be with me on stage. I pick it up and I'll, just you play.
Yep. Yep.
So you can play another one, Dice to Bust. Dice to Dust.
So it gives us sort of a palette. We can kind of create with these widgets whatever it is that we want, and we can create variations from them. And we don't have to worry about being glued down to one controller or one instrument, right? I mean, is that how you would sum it up?
That's right. And I have, for example, right now, I have a keyboard in front of me, an Arturia Keylab, just a simple keyboard. But I have up and down things that I can go. Mm-hmm. And it's very important that you can go instantly. Like if I'm playing something, and it's extremely important that I can just switch from one to the other.
Yep. And we've got built-in sound bleed over as well, right?
That's right. So
just wrote in, can we see the movement of a widget? It's Johnny PT. Do you have the ability to move any of those widgets?
Sure.
Can
you
demo how that
know what? I don't have my pedal control, but you know what? That's easy. Like, let's say, well, you know what? Let's do this one. And I'll just say in here, I'll just go to MIDI and say learn, and learn it to the slider fader here. Mm-hmm. And that's it. I just, it's a fader on my Keylab, and I can just kind of. So this is controlling the level. So if I'm like, see how it's scaled? It goes from 0. If I go all the way up, it doesn't go beyond 0 dB.
Yep.
And down it goes only to -9.9. I don't want it all the way, because this is typically connected to with my expression pedal. So when I go all the way down, I want it to be lower, but not completely silent. It's like, but I don't know if you can hear it, but.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And these sounds are not second rate either. There's a
No.
lot of really amazing sounds for guitar that can be hosted inside.
And these are all, Brett, combinations of things. So I have this feedback that I typically like. I don't know if people have seen this, but if I turn it on, I have a button on it, but if I turn it on, it's like. Yeah. Right? So it's an acoustic feedback thingy that I use, and that goes, to tease you with my, with my setup of amps and effects. Then I kept this control of the volume that I mapped this widget to. So when I move this, when I move the slider from 0 to all the way up, but this slider goes just this much. And the reason is the widget, because I scaled this widget over here, right? So the value, if you look here, see, it's just moving between these little two lines.
Yes.
That's why it's going. So if I do this, you can see, yeah. And that goes into the global rack space. And in the global rack space, there's a bunch of other stuff. Like this hosts my, wah-wah, auto wah-wah and chorus and tremolo and so on. This is one of my favorite reverbs, the auto space. I love this reverb, also and delay. And then I have a stereo maker where I make things a little bit wider and so on. And I can turn these on and off. And with the bottom, this bottom part, this is the global rack space, right? You can hide it if you don't want to see it, but
yes.
Yeah.
And we're going to do actually a whole week just on global rack space.
Right.
So Nebojsa, thank you so much for sharing kind of on widgets. I know this is like sort of the backbone of how we're controlling our software, right? This is how we access. And one other thing I wanted to add, especially about widgets, is that widgets bypasses the need for traditional MIDI. So we don't have to worry about having, multiple CC messages or program change messages interfering with other things within your setup. It's the middleman, and it really solves a lot of problems you didn't even know you had.
It's not even sometimes possible. Sometimes you can just tell a plugin, listen to CC number 52 for a value, and it goes like only from 0 to 127. But then if I have three things that send CC 52, the whole mess happens. Like, what's going to happen now?
Yes.
So, and you can't see what's mapped to what. You can't scale it. You can't control it. The widgets are really very powerful.
So for live performance, we need a better solution, which is what the widgets are. Nebojsa, thank you so much for coming in and chatting through this. I'm actually going to pull David in here in a second to chat through something else, but we'll definitely be seeing more of Nebojsa. Thank you so much for popping in. So just little things like this, where we're taking widgets and we are mapping them to things. It sounds like something super simple, but it allows for other stuff, right? It allows for the rig manager. So if we have something different, we can easily switch it out. It allows that we don't have, if multiple different plugins are listening for the same message. And then we can't overlook that being able to build a rack space in Gig Performer that you can look at and see what you're controlling makes working faster, which means you get to playing more quickly. And speaking about speed, I'm going to bring in David right now, and he's going to talk through just a couple of the time-saving things that he's sort of built into the workflow that helps you spend I'm seeing David making a face about this right now. It's good. I wish that everybody could see it, but some of the time-saving things that are just caked in to the software to kind of help us speed through that. So let's bring David in. Here he is. Hey, David.
Hi, Brett. Hi, everybody who's listening. This is very weird. It's like being in front of a TV camera and you have no idea who's at the other end.
It's true. It's true. Lots of Gig Performer users. So David, we were talking earlier just about how saving a couple of seconds here and there on the back end really equates to a good amount of time. So what are some of your favorite, time savers that you've caked into Gig Performer?
Probably the biggest one is the quick find, quick search.
Yes.
So if you need a particular plugin, hunting for it with pop-up menus is slow. I mean, you can see everything, but it's much easier to just type a partial name. I can show this. I'm not quite sure.
Awesome. Can you share your screen?
I have no idea. There's a share button.
It says share with the little plus.
But how do I share a piece of it? Because I've got. How do I pick what it shares?
You can choose a window, but the window might not show the pop-up.
Okay.
You might have to minimize your stuff.
Yeah. Hang on. Hang on. Select window. It says screen. Okay. So StreamYard, screen 1, screen 2. It does not see Gig Performer. Why is that?
Oh, because it should be under the program then.
I'm sorry, what? Sorry, guys. Share
What if you-
screen. Share screen. Blah blah blah. And then what am I sharing? My browser has blocked my screen. Okay.
Do you want to talk me through it? I can share Gig Performer from my end.
Sure.
All
But
right.
why is it? Click the screen icon in your address bar. Where's this? Where's this? Oh, there it is.
Did it work for you?
This is so much for workflow, right?
Ah.
I am just.
Oh, well, now we've lost him. Well, I think I can show this. So here goes. So what David's talking about here, oops, is in the back end in the wiring view. And what happens, I think it's Command P. Yeah. So this is a quick insert of a plugin, right? So if I were to start typing in contact, it's already bringing that up. Oh, David's back. I'm going to see if David, am I doing this right?
Yeah, yeah. So actually, that's perfect because you typed in con, and that was enough to get you the thing. You could also have typed just TAKT.
Very interesting.
Right. So so you can do partial matches. Now, if you type TAK space VS maybe. Yep. So that's enough to restrict it to just the VST version. So con space VS is a quick way to get it. So it's doing partial search on individual words.
Yes.
So when I use, I don't know if you have the Piano Tech.
I don't have it, but it's been on my list.
Yeah. So the Piano Tech 7 from ModArt, and I just type PIA 7. And that's enough to so that's a very useful quick thing, and that works for parameter searching as well. So
right, let's see if we can demo that. So
drag a widget, yeah. Okay, so click on a widget, select right. So you could go quick there, and if you just type like song, yeah. So you'll find all the song. So if you type song space name or just AME, yeah, it's going to just, so it's a quick way to just restrict the view to just pieces. So that's a very convenient workflow.
Yes.
Probably my next favorite workflow thing is actually favorites.
Yes, let's look at favorites. Favorites are great. I actually think I have one saved. Do you want to explain what that is, David?
Excuse me. So the idea here is you've built a collection. That's so you have an audio file player. So why don't you create like an instrument and go into an effect and go into another effect?
So create a new rack space. Is that what you're saying?
Sure. You don't need to, but sure.
Okay.
Okay. So now so add an instrument. Yeah, sure. By the way, another feature. This is just while you're here. One of the problems traditionally, Gig. So when you run Contact, you get a huge number of ports because we ask how many ports do you have, and one of the things you can do now. There's a little blue dot on the far right.
There is.
Click on that and it pops up straight away. Say I only want like 4. Yeah. And so now it just shows me the first 4. So that's useful. And that in Gig Performer 4, that can be remembered on a per plugin basis as opposed to Gig Performer 3, which only did it globally. So now, so now connect some effect. Yeah, sure. Connect some effect. Yeah, type effect. I would say type effect, and you'll just see your effects, and then space. Yeah, you need to get more effects.
Well, you can help me on that one, David. I'm going to pull up.
It doesn't matter because that doesn't matter what we're using because we're just same problem.
Did that wrong. We'll do this. We'll do max audio channels, right?
Yeah.
4.
Okay. Sure.
Okay. Oh, and here's a time saver too, right? If we're holding down Shift, we get stereo cabling.
That's another quick thing. Okay, so let's say you now have another one. Put another one in. No, put another one in before there.
All right.
I don't know why the blue dot on the far right is not showing up. on this one. That's
Reason is
odd.
not optimized for the M1. I think that's part of the issue.
Could be. Okay, so now let's say you have that. Okay, now you've modified, so open contact and you add a library in, for example.
And add what?
Put some instrument in.
Oh, all right. I've got the Giant in there.
Why can't I see your plugin?
Oh, because it's on the wrong screen. Here you go.
Okay, so you've got instrument. Okay, close that. Right. So now select all three of those and right click and do save as favorite. And give it, call it David's favorite. Just, for now. Yeah. Okay. So now just go to the pop-up menu. Just right click anywhere in the middle and go to user favorites. And there's David's favorite right there. And if you click that, it'll come right in. There it is again. Also, if you go to the quick, delete them all. Sure. Also, if you go to the quick plugin,
Command P.
Yeah, and now type David. It's in there too.
Okay, I didn't know that one, David. See, you learn something new every day.
Yeah, and so lots of ways to quickly now reinsert, and the state of those three plugins is included, so it's exactly whatever sound you create. So if you're like a session musician and you've built up a bunch of stuff, and you go in somewhere and somebody says in the studio, I need a piano with a bunch of reverb, blah 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 blah. You can just say, piano with reverb, which you've created before, and just insert it. So those are things I like a lot. Anything that speeds things up, and I'm always on the lookout for new things where I can say, if I had this would be much quicker. And even if you're just saving a second, those seconds really add up.
Because it's the exponential result of it, right? If you're saving 1 second and you save 1 second 60 times over the course of however many years, you're looking at a lot of space. And for pros who are using this software, who are playing all the time, not redoing your work is a big deal. Yeah. Things like favorites, things like inserting in. I mean, it's huge because, like you mentioned, like we're real musicians, we're playing real instruments. So it's paramount. It's majorly important, and I think it gets overlooked a lot in this space.
As far as possible, I'm always interested in how can I do this faster.
Yeah.
Once you're a power user, and the other piece of the philosophy is this thing shouldn't get in your way. You shouldn't have to be a technician expert to be able to do some music stuff. Yep. I mean, sure, there are advanced things where, if you learn about scripting or you learn about other fancier things, you can do even more. But you should be able to be very productive and creative with the straight thing without having to be technical. That was an important goal. And even though we're technical, when I'm in music mode, I don't want to be technical.
Right, you've done the work ahead of time, so now you want to play.
Well, it's kind of, when I've used other DAWs, and even when I've tried some of the competitors, which of course, if I had liked the competitors, we wouldn't have bothered building Gig Performer. It's like, wait, how do you do this? Why do I have to do this? Why didn't they do such and such? And it gets in your way, and you have to come out of musician mode and focus on, okay, I've got to get this bus or this aux channel and connect this here and do that. And, I really want to try and avoid those kinds of things wherever possible.
Yep, 100%. Well, David, thanks so much for coming on and sharing. I appreciate you giving us some insight into some of the time-saving stuff in Gig Performer.
My pleasure, anytime.
Awesome.
We're grateful to everybody who is finding Gig Performer useful.
Yeah. Thank you all for being here. If you guys have got any value out of this, make sure you click the like button, share it with a friend. And like we mentioned earlier, if you are on the fence about Gig Performer, you can try it free for 2 weeks. And I have to tell you, you won't be disappointed. If you're not convinced of that already, you got to give it a shot for yourself. So we got a question coming in. Is any of this available for the iPad? I believe the answer is no. However, everybody's invited to the party. So there are ways you can connect an iPad as a controller using OSC that would make it possible to use it. But in terms of just bringing the iPad, we're not there, and that's okay. So this is the question I want to pose as we're kind of wrapping up here. Oh, by the way, if you have any questions for David or Nebojsa while we're here, you can go ahead and pop that in the chat. If you've got any value, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, don't forget to hit that like button. Help more people hear about what's happening here at Gig Performer. And if you have any questions for the developers who happen to be right here, right now, pop that in the comments as well. But I want to ask you this question because it's important. And I want you not just to answer it, right? But I want you to answer it with the intention that you have the ability to improve your process. And I want you to share the answer with us. You can do that by going to our Facebook group. It's called Gig Performer Official Users Group. You can answer that through our community forum. But I want you to answer the question, how are my tools affecting my work? Okay, it's an important question because our tools shape the way we think. And what we're using kind of changes how we go about things. And it's really important to ask this question and take stock every once in a while. Are you using software right now that allows you to work quickly and get straight to the playing of the music? Or are you using software that's actually getting in your way? Is there something that you can simplify? Maybe there's something that you learned today that you can apply to your live setups. Maybe you're listening and you're like, hey, Brett, I actually need to try Gig Performer, or I need to try this new approach to Gig Performer. Let us know in the comments. Let us know in the Facebook group. These are questions that really have the ability to shape everything you do afterwards. Now, friends, I really appreciate each and every one of you being here. I want to give you just a little idea of kind of what's coming up in the next couple of weeks so that you know, because every Thursday for the next 6 weeks, we are tuning in here to do a deep dive into a foundational element of Gig Performer. So we've got a question coming in here. So let's see. We've got Facebook user. We're not sure who it is, but that's okay. Can it be used with a Windows Surface Pro? Hold on. Nebojsa, can I add you to the stream? So Nebojsa just held up his.
Yes, I use this as my backup all the time. Just, I just have all of my setup. Well, it's off now. My entire setup, it's from this. I use a MacBook, but this is
your microphone is maybe a little bit low, Nebojsa.
My volume?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'll this is my backup, so I always back this with me. If something goes wrong, this is my entire setup here. I just drop it.
Yeah.
Works great.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see here. I've got another question coming in that I'm not sure I know how to answer, but let's see. So are the widget backgrounds vector-based? When designing widgets, I would love to import a graphic as a background. So for example, a pod-shaped kidney to replace graphics. No. Okay, not vector-based. But you know what? I want to talk a little bit about that. I've chatted with David and Nebojsa about this before. We want people to get to the music quickly. So we have chosen to limit some of the options for bringing in other graphics and things in exchange for stability, in exchange for streamlining the whole process. But thank you, Glenn. That's a good process. And Rush just wrote in, as a solo artist, what I use helps me with spontaneity. Absolutely. And Gig Performer plays well with a lot of other software. So if you're using Black Hole, we've got a great article on that. About that on our website if you want to check that out, how it can kind of play a little bit more with your other software. But let's have a look here as more questions are coming in and about what's coming up next. So we are going to dive into a couple of different elements coming up in the next 6 weeks. So we're going to spend some time focusing on the visual layout. So we're going to do a widget deep dive, and we're going to do a deep dive into the wiring view coming up next Thursday. So you don't want to miss that. Make sure you are on our newsletter. Make sure you are on our Facebook page. Make sure you are connected on the forum so you don't miss it. We're going to dive into this because, as you can see from what Nebojsa demonstrated, it is powerful. Widgets are powerful. The visual layout is powerful and flexible and unbelievably important. So we're going to spend a good amount of time diving into that next week. The following week, we're going to look at system actions. And we mentioned that in a DAW, it's really important to have more global control and less important to have individual control. But it doesn't mean that it's not important at all. And at Gig Performer, both David and Nebojsa have decided that they want you to be able to control Gig Performer without having to do much scripting. And so the System Actions plugin allows you to control things like tap tempo, next song part, the tuner, accessing the tuner, accessing many global functions easily. And they can also be mapped to widgets. And widgets are also helpful too, because if you have more than one controller, you can have things controlled from more than one area. Okay. After that, we're going to be diving into the global rack space, which is a new Gig Performer 4 feature. Now, for me, and I think for a lot of people, this was a game changer because I actually want to have the same piano manipulated across many rack spaces. And this lets me do that without having to reinstate Contact a million times. And then after that, we're going to do set list mode, which I generally don't use this. However, I just got ready for a gig where I am using it, and I will probably from now on always use it because it was that helpful for me. So set list mode, we're going to spend a week on it. We've got one more question coming in that I want to answer because I think that it's an important question. So Rush Little on Facebook wrote in, for the most part, I'm a busker. How would this help me? And so Rush, I want to just pose a question back to you. And I want to say, what is missing from your busking experience? And that's how Gig Performer will help you. It can do unbelievable things. You can, add effects. You can have backing tracks. You can have, a set list. You can have your chord charts displayed. So there are opportunities for you to move your set list to another level, move your performance to another level. But you have to ask yourself, what's the next dimension for me? Is this going to help me? Is this going to elevate my performance, or will it be a distraction? And we can't answer that for you. But what we can say is that it has been designed as a tool to elevate it over being designed for a tool for distraction. So specifically too, Nebojsa just sent me a message. He said, you can use vocal effects, guitar amps, and cabinets in one device. Yeah, so you can affect your sound. And I think it could be really cool. But I'll tell you what, 2 weeks, you can try Gig Performer for free. So give it a shot. Find out if there is something missing. And yeah, and that's what my thought would be. So friends, we're coming to the end of our time. I want to thank you all. Again, if you got value out of our time together, make sure you click the like, make sure you click the subscribe, and we want to hear you. So let us know, what are you going to do to make your designing of your live setup more efficient? So here's another one. Oops, let's see. Is there a hardware plugin in Gig Performer so I can use external sound devices? Is there a hardware plugin in Gig Performer